Give me a few minutes and I'll show you everything you need to know about watching this eclipse. On August 12, 2026, a total solar eclipse will cross Greenland, Iceland, and Spain. But depending on where you are, the view will be very different. Some people will see the sun disappear completely. Some will see it shrink into a thin crescent. And farther away from the path of totality, you may only see a small bite taken out of the sun. So what will you be able to see from your location? How can you watch and photograph the eclipse safely? And if you have a telescope and an equatorial mount, how should you prepare? At the end of the video, I'll also show a timing table for several major locations, so stay for that if you're planning to watch the eclipse. Hi, I'm Ethan, and welcome to Rooftop Astronomy. First, let's look at the path of totality. The path crosses northern Russia, Greenland, Iceland, and the North Atlantic before reaching northern Spain and a small part of northeastern Portugal. Only observers inside this narrow path will experience a true total solar eclipse. Before totality, the moon will slowly move across the sun. The full solar disk will gradually turn into a crescent, while the daylight around you slowly fades. But the dramatic change usually happens during the final few seconds before totality. The sun becomes an extremely thin arc, the sky rapidly darkens, and once the bright surface of the sun is completely covered, the solar corona finally becomes visible. You may also see bright red prominences along the edge of the sun, together with Bailey's beads and the famous diamond ring effect. This eclipse, however, will not have an especially long total phase. At most land-based observing locations, totality will last roughly 1 to 2 minutes, and observing conditions will vary a lot depending on where you go. In Iceland, the sun will be higher in the sky, and the duration of totality is relatively good. But weather over the North Atlantic can change very quickly, and clouds are a serious risk. If you choose Iceland, having a car and several backup observing locations is a very good idea. Greenland is also inside the path of totality, but transportation and logistics are much more difficult, so it is better suited to organize eclipse tours or experienced teams. For most people, Spain may be the more practical choice. Large areas of northern and northeastern Spain lie inside the path of totality, with easier transportation and accommodation. But Spain has one major challenge. This eclipse happens very close to sunset. The sun will be extremely low in the western sky. So when choosing an observing site, being inside the path of totality is not enough. You also need a completely clear western horizon. A location slightly away from the center line, but with a perfectly open horizon, may actually be better than a location with a few extra seconds of totality hidden behind a mountain. Next, let's look at the areas that will see a major partial eclipse. The UK, Ireland, France, Germany, Italy, most of Portugal, and many other parts of Europe will see a significant partial eclipse. The closer you are to the path of totality, the more of the sun will be covered. In some cities, more than 90% of the sun will disappear, leaving only a very thin crescent. The daylight may also become noticeably dimmer, but this is still very different from a total solar eclipse. Even if 99% of the sun is covered, it is still a partial eclipse. As long as even a small part of the solar surface remains visible, the sky will not become truly dark, and the corona will not appear. That said, a deep partial eclipse is still absolutely worth watching. When the sun becomes a thin crescent, a telephoto lens can capture some very unusual images. Farther away from the path of totality, the sun may only lose a small piece from its edge. Most of Canada, Alaska, and parts of the northern United States will see different levels of partial eclipse. In general, the farther south you go, the smaller the eclipse becomes. In these areas, the daylight and temperature may barely change at all. If you didn't know an eclipse was happening, you might not even notice it. But through eclipse glasses, or through a camera or telescope equipped with a proper solar filter, you can still clearly watch the moon move across the sun. A small partial eclipse is also great for a time lapse. Keep the camera fixed, take an image every few minutes, and you can record the changing shape of the sun over time. Now let's talk about how to observe it safely. Whether you are watching a total eclipse, a deep partial eclipse, or just a small bite out of the sun, one rule always applies. If the sun is not completely covered, you need proper solar protection. For naked eye viewing, use certified eclipse glasses. Regular sunglasses, exposed film, smoked glass, CDs, or dark plastic are not safe substitutes. Put the eclipse glasses on before looking up at the sun. When you are finished, look away first and then remove them. If the glasses are damaged, scratched, punctured, or badly creased, do not use them. Only during the brief period of totality, when the sun is completely covered by the moon, can observers inside the path of totality safely remove their eclipse glasses and look directly at the corona. As soon as the bright edge of the sun returns, eye protection must go back on immediately. If you are using a telephoto phone camera, camera lens, video camera, or telescope, you also need a proper solar filter on the front of the optical system. Solar filter film, when correctly installed and undamaged, is one of the simplest and most affordable options. Never place the filter behind the lens or at the eyepiece. If you are using a telescope on an equatorial mount, the solar filter must be securely attached to the front of the telescope. Otherwise, keep it completely covered and never look for the sun through an unfiltered finder scope. One simple way to aim the telescope is to watch its shadow on the ground. When the shadow becomes as small as possible, the telescope is usually close to pointing directly at the sun. If your mount supports a solar tracking rate, select solar rate. If it does not, sidereal tracking will still work well enough for short imaging sessions. If you are inside the path of totality, you can remove the front solar filter once the sun is completely covered and photograph the corona and prominences. But make sure the filter is back in place before totality ends to protect your camera and other equipment. It is a good idea to set up voice alerts or a countdown before the eclipse and practice removing and replacing the filter in advance. If you photograph the eclipse, let me know in the comments. And if you share your images with the community, people outside the eclipse path can enjoy the event too. Finally, here are the eclipse times for several representative locations. All times shown are local time. Exact timings can vary by a few minutes depending on your exact location. Before observing, check the precise timing, eclipse magnitude, and solar altitude for where you will actually be. Feel free to pause the video and save these tables. If you are traveling into the path of totality, also check the weather, road access, and local terrain in advance. In Spain, make sure the western horizon is completely clear. In Iceland, having several backup locations gives you a much better chance of escaping the clouds. And that is your observing guide for the August 12th, 2026 solar eclipse. Good luck to everyone planning to watch it. And most importantly, I hope you get clear skies. See you next time.